You ready?
All right.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to have you. Yeah, are we ready to start?
We are ready to start. Share it now, share the screen now, or wait?
Yeah. Well, you can do the full screen if you want to start.
Okay.
And then we'll.
Good. Are they?
Yeah, we're good.
Good evening, everyone. Hello. I don't know if they can hear us or not. Wave your hand if you can hear us.
But your mics are muted. So
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's just the feedback.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Perry Harker, and I'm with Carteret Community College, and I'm here tonight to welcome you on behalf of our president, Dr. Tracy Mancini. She had a conflict tonight. There's a conference going on here in town, and she was unable to make it, but she wanted to make sure that we let everyone know how appreciative we are that you are joining us here tonight, and those of you that are at remote sites. So tonight we're at the Down East Bridge. Everybody at the bridge, raise your hand, wave your hand. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for being there. And we're also on campus in Carteret Community College in that group. Wave your hand, let us see you there. Do we have any? Yep, okay.
Yep.
Thank you very, very much. And this legal women, so no, thanks.
Nope, nope.
Okay.
That's all you got today.
Oh, good. Well, look, let me give you a quick overview. A little over a year ago, a couple of years ago, we received a USDA, United States Department of Agriculture grant for about $900,000 to buy equipment that would allow us to deploy it out in the community so that we could provide more outreach for citizens that want to participate in training and seminars and workshops like tonight. So this allows in these remote sites, citizens that live in those communities to hopefully be very close to the site and attend the training and participate, as we are gonna have that going on tonight. So I mentioned that we were at the bridge down east in Harper's Island. We're on our campus at Carteret Community College in Moorhead. We also have these sites at Fort Benjamin in Newport, Harlow Community Center. We're also at East Carteret High School, Croatan High School, and we're going to be, and Department of Social Services. And we're going to be deploying additional sites at Beaufort Housing Authority, Atlantic Elementary, and several other sites here in town. So as you can see, we want to come to you, bring the training and the opportunities for you to participate that in your communities, and this will help us do that. Before we go a little bit further, I want to introduce Michelle, who organized all this, and she wants to give you some instructions.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. It's exciting to see everybody all together. When you walked in, hopefully you signed the sign-in sheet and also picked up a sticky note. If you haven't, you've got time to grab one, that's fine. But we wanted to make sure that you guys had an opportunity at the end of our session to just answer a couple of quick questions. Just let us know what you think you liked the most, what we did well, what you'd like us to improve upon. And then also finally, if you guys have any suggestions for any other topics in the future. One of the ways we came up with the 4 topics for this first session was surveying everybody and seeing what are the most pertinent topics to Carteret County. And we want to continue on each semester doing the same thing. So it helps to hear from you guys as to what's the most important topics to cover. So thank you very much for coming, and don't forget to fill out your sheets and enjoy.
Thank you, Michelle. As you heard Michelle say, we have 4 topics, one each month. Next month, the focus will be on suicide prevention. And then in March, we will have vaping, health issues related to vaping. And then in April, we will be looking at managing your blood pressure. And we will be at different sites each month. If you want to learn more about that, certainly visit our website at Carteret Community College, www.carteret.edu, and you'll find more information on that. And I think Michelle will be sending out information later on that. Tonight, our focus is on opioid, and we have with us Dr. Randall Williams, who is you're the executive director?
Director
of Consolidated Services, and under that umbrella is our health department and our Department of Social Services, and we're delighted to have Dr. Williams join our county and run that organization, but even more so delighted to have him here tonight. So please welcome Dr. Randall Williams.
Thank you, Perry. again, I can't thank you enough. As we look at health in Carteret County, we feel the #1 health challenge we face now is the opioid crisis, and I'd also just put substance misuse in that. By any measure, if you look at Carteret County, if you look at the number of overdoses, the state just released their latest statistics for the year. And we continue throughout the state. We saw a 40% increase last year. This year, it looks like it's going to be about a 20% increase. We have 11 people die somewhere in North Carolina every day from an opioid overdose. And here in Carteret County, we're in the top 5 to 10 of the 100 counties at about 3 deaths a month. And sadly, many of them are young in their 20s. I have the opportunity to talk to their mothers and fathers, and it's heartbreaking. And I would strongly suspect in our audience tonight and in this room here, we've certainly, many of us, including me, have been affected by this personally. I had someone much wiser than me say that the opposite word for addiction is connection. And so we believe that fervently. And so that's why we're so appreciative of those of you who've taken the time to do this, because we think making those connections in so many ways is probably the best solution to preventing and helping those people. One of our guiding principles at Consolidated Human Services, as Perry said, that's the Department of Social Services and the Health Department, is that we go to where people are. We are like lifeguards. We try to rescue people or at least prevent people from harm. And we don't tell people who are swimming out beyond the breakers, if you'll come in about 10 more yards, we'll come out and save you. That's kind of far out. Could you swim in a little closer and we'll come out? No, we go to where people are, wherever that is in Carteret County. So we're incredibly appreciative of Perry and Michelle and Dr. Mancini for this. We're the 3rd largest county in North Carolina. We are 1,600 square miles, and we're about 2 hours from Stella to Cedar Island on a good day. And so I think that in itself presents some challenges and may explain some things. Again, I'm very appreciative tonight that we have people here in the room that have been incredibly helpful. Let me start out. I'm a surgeon by training. So when I'm confronted with a problem, whether it's a patient coming in saying they have pain or whatever, the first thing I want to do is make a diagnosis. And to do that, I take a history. And so that's what I've been charged by the county commissioners and Tommy Burns, our county manager, to do. I have experience from this, from some previous things I've done at a state level, both here as state health director in North Carolina and as secretary of health in Missouri, where I led these efforts. And so when we go to make the diagnosis, what we've done is we've used the opportunity for the opioid settlement by Attorney General Stein and other attorney generals that's delivered about $1 million to Carteret County this year alone, and then probably about another $400,000 to $500,000 for the next 18 years to help us try to prevent and help people who are confronted with substance misuse. And so one bucket is clearly prevention, and one bucket is clearly helping those people who and their families who already found themselves in that situation. So what we've done is we have met in a series of seminars throughout the community, and I've met one-on-one with 45 entities that are doing some wonderful things here in Carteret County. So we have some tremendous strengths here. And that's important because the problem's getting worse. As I just said, the state released the data today that we're just increasing the number of deaths throughout North Carolina and in Carteret County every year. And I'll talk to you about why that is. But the strengths we have here in Carteret County we have a wonderful hospital system. I met with Kyle recently, and I used to work there many moons ago. And we're fortunate to have a strong healthcare system, I believe, in this community. We have a wonderful health department and a wonderful Department of Social Services. Nina Oliver in our health department, 18 years of experience. Jessica Adams in social services, over 15 years of experience. That is a real plus for this county. The thing you need to understand about opioids especially is that it affects everything. When I was state health director, it was estimated that 3/4 of all prisoners in Central Prison in Raleigh were there because of drugs, either stealing to get drugs, selling drugs, killing around drugs. But at the end of the day, it was drugs that got them in Central Prison, our largest, most maximum security prison in the state. So it certainly affects Sheriff Buck. He investigates every overdose as a homicide because you can be prosecuted for supplying the drugs that kill people. So that means more detectives for him. It means more property crimes to investigate. It means more violence. Social services, 75% of our children in foster homes are there because of drugs. Their parents, or mother or father or both on drugs. So that's 3/4 of all the children we have in foster care. In our schools, we're incredibly fortunate. In addition to having a tremendous law enforcement community here, we have a wonderful school system, acclaimed by many. Richie grew up, went to East Carteret, so he certainly understands the lay of land. We have Kim Crone here tonight, here in this room. She heads support services. She was previously at Croatan, and so we're blessed to have her here. She's incredibly supportive of what we're trying to do. We have great governance. We have 7 county commissioners who are very aligned in this. To their great credit, they have tasked the county manager, Tommy Burns, and he's tasked us to make this better because they read the paper and they see every month the 2 to 3 to 4 26-year-olds who pass away from overdoses. So I'm very appreciative of their support as we look to spend this $1 million this year. Community College, again, we're very fortunate to have them because we clearly think that one of the problems, and I'm going to get into that more in a minute, is accumulated disadvantage, is the term we use in social services, which is if your mother's on heroin, your father's in prison, and you're faced with pretty abject poverty, those disadvantages can create despair, which have been associated with substance use. So our community college system here, which is excellent, certainly gives people an off-ramp from that to be purposeful about finding a trade or to go to college or others. But again, we're very blessed to have that. So you would think with all those strengths, why are our numbers getting worse every year? And the answer goes to this. We've been fighting the war on drugs since the early 60s, late 50s. It started out to be heroin in mostly large metropolitan areas, New Jersey, LA, St. Louis. And then it moved on to cocaine. Heroin, cocaine in the 70s and 80s became a huge problem, and those official war on drugs started. And then it kind of evolved into methamphetamine, meth, and that certainly became a huge issue here in this county and where I've been in other places. And then in 1999, there was a huge inflection point. And that was, while I was practicing for 30 years, delivering 2,000 babies, the beginning of Percocet and OxyContin and the widespread prescription by doctors like me who were told that pain was the 5th vital sign and that one could not become addicted on these drugs. And so we prescribed very, very liberally Percocet, OxyContin, Lortab. I was a surgeon. I operated on people all the time. They were in pain. I was told pain was the fifth vital sign. And that if I didn't treat people for their pain, I was a bad doctor, that I was insensitive because I was letting them suffer. And we had a drug that was non-addictive. Why wouldn't you give it to them? And very sadly, that led to a very widespread opioid epidemic, man-made. It's not like a hurricane or a tornado. This was created by us. You do not see this in other countries in the world. Europe, I spend a lot of time overseas with the State Department, but in the Far East, in Europe, they don't do this. They don't give people Percocet and Lortab. They use Motrin and Tylenol. My friends from the UK, and France, and other countries. So we created it, and then that led to a path to heroin and now fentanyl. Fentanyl is made in China, synthetic. It's shipped to Mexico, then it comes into the United States, basically to 6 areas, and then it travels down the highways. It follows I-95, I-85. Where I just left St. Louis was one of the hubs. It was the lead, according to the DEA, was the leading center in the United States for cocaine trafficking. Because if you could get the cocaine across from Mexico into Texas and then get it to St. Louis, from there it could go to Chicago, it could go to Kansas City, it could go to Tennessee. Missouri was contiguous to 8 states. So once you got to St. Louis, it could go everywhere. And certainly we see here coming down the I-95 corridor here in Carteret County. It's almost impossible to cut off the spigot. It's just almost impossible. There's so much money involved, and people are willing to risk it for that amount of money. It's just hasn't worked over 70 years to cut off the supply. It just hasn't. We wished it did, but it did. So because of that, we now find ourselves with these variants of fentanyl that are incredibly lethal. They're very unforgiving. We certainly have case reports of young people who order online 1 Percocet just to see what it's like to get high, and what they're shipped is fentanyl, and that 1 pill kills them. And that's almost not even anecdotal. We are seeing fentanyl laced in marijuana and cocaine. I talked to a young family. They lost their daughter this year, and she was, by their own admission, using marijuana, but from that got introduced almost cruelly, I would say, to fentanyl, and became addicted and passed away. But I don't think she got up. I don't think she really intended to use fentanyl. It just kind of got slipped to her as she was using marijuana. And so people always ask me, well, Randall, why would a drug dealer lace marijuana or cocaine or other substances with fentanyl if it could possibly kill them? And it's because they want people to become addicted. That's how they drive their market. The more people who are addicted, the more drugs they can sell. So if they can introduce it through a peripheral drug like marijuana or cocaine, they've increased their customer base. An incredible sad irony about the nature of addiction, which is, again, as I get older and older, I become much more sympathetic about it, because even in my own family, we've had people who've become addicted through the introduction of taking prescribed pain pills. But in St. Louis, where I was, we would get variants of fentanyl that we would know. We'd have 4 people die in one day in St. Louis, and we knew there was a bad batch of fentanyl out there. And we knew we'd contact the DEA from the medical examiner's office and say, you have to get this off the street immediately, because if you don't, we'll have 10 more deaths in the next 24 hours. And the reason was that people who were addicted, rather than don't go there, that'll kill you, they would go there because that must be some really potent stuff. If it can kill you, I can get more drug for my money by going to that dealer because it's really powerful stuff. And so, again, that is the nature of addiction, is that it drives you to seek that to which you're addicted. So, I'm now going to go through our slides and show you the diagnosis we've kind of made and how we've come to that diagnosis. And then we'll talk about the solutions and the treatments that we propose. But before I do that, I'm going to break off a minute, and I'd like to teach all of you how to use Narcan. Hopefully you have in front of you boxes of Narcan. They're supposed to have about 8. There we go. Great. Okay. For those of you who aren't interested in it, that's fine. But if you are, follow along with me. If we don't have enough boxes, to all those in this room, you can go to the health department. And as long as you can identify a need, a loved one, a colleague, a situation, a neighbor, somebody you're worried about, we never want you to be looking at somebody who's not breathing and watching them die just because you didn't have basically a bottle of Afrin in your hand. And that's basically what this is. I'm going to open it up. There are 2 vials in each box. You're welcome to open it up. And it looks like an Afrin bottle. So the situation would be, you walk into your house, or you get called, somebody comes screaming out of your neighbor's house and says, help me, my daughter, my brother, my mother is not breathing. And you go over there. Just a typical scenario would be a 28-year-old, and you look at them and they're blue, and they're breathing very, very shallow. There may be evidence of drug abuse there, drug paraphernalia, but there may not be. But if you find yourself in that situation and you have any reason to think that a perfectly healthy 25-year-old is lying there not breathing and getting ready to die because they're blue, what you would do is lie the person on their back. First thing you want to do is call 911 or yell for help. If there's anybody around you, always call for help. I'm getting my small boat captain's license, and the first thing they teach you when somebody goes overboard is say, man overboard, then throw the life preserver, because you want to alert all those around you that something bad is happening. And so you want to tell whoever's there, if there's anybody else with you, call 911. We have an overdose every day here in Carteret County. Every time I see an ambulance driving down the road, I know statistically there's a decent chance it's going to an overdose. And so, and for those of you who wonder, the heat maps, I have them in my office, a picture where every ambulance goes every day, and it's throughout Carteret County. It's not just down east, it's not Newport, it's not Atlantic Beach, it's not Cape Carteret, it's everywhere. The heat map is consistently red in Carteret County everywhere where those ambulances are going. So if you think just because you live in Emerald Isle or you live in Newport, you're okay, you're not. These overdoses, I can show you the heat map. I can tell you where the ambulances go. So you lie the person on their back, and all you do is take this little vial, like Afrin, and you put it in the nose and you just push. It's not graduated, just push. You don't have to push hard, and just put it all the way up in the nose till your hands hit the nostril, your fingers hit the nostril, and then push. Then you turn the person on their side, because often when people come out of an overdose, they will throw up, and you do not want them to aspirate on the vomit. You want them to throw up to the side. And so it usually takes about 2 to 3 minutes to kick in. And if it doesn't work in that 3 minutes, if they're still not breathing, then you take the second vial in the box and you can put it in the same nostril or the other nostril, doesn't matter, and do the same thing again. Unfortunately, there's some variants of fentanyl that are so strong. The sheriff will tell you, ASA will tell you, there's sometimes they have to use 3 and 4 of these because of how potent some of this fentanyl is. But again, you can live with about 6 minutes without oxygen. So often when you find these people, they will be breathing, but very, very shallow. If they have no pulse whatsoever, then you would start CPR. But often they'll have a pulse, they just can't, they're just not breathing. I'll take this to just tell you parenthetically, we have in North Carolina, the Good Samaritan law. So I was telling a group earlier today, one of the saddest stories I've ever heard was in Missouri. A woman's daughter was with her 3 friends in a car. They had been doing drugs. They got fentanyl and she quit breathing. And her 3 friends, so worried about getting in trouble, dumped her on the side of the road and drove off and left her to die in a ditch on the side of the road. These were her friends because they were so worried they were going to get arrested. And for her mother, when she told me that, that was the hardest part for her, that she had died alone in that ditch, kind of abandoned by her friends. So understand, make sure your children and friends understand the Good Samaritan law, that in North Carolina, if you're making a good faith effort to rescue somebody's life, you will not be subject to criminal penalties if they do in fact drugs at the scene, because you were saving that person's life. So I just mentioned that I would want everybody to know that. At the end, I ask if you have any questions about the fentanyl. Again, if you'd like to get more of it, if you have a need for it, we don't have an infinite supply, but we have a finite supply. So, but if you feel like you might be in that situation, please come by the health department on Bridges Street, 3820 Bridges Street, and we'll be glad to give it to you and do that. So I'm going to stop with that. And then I'm going to move into the slides. And I'm going to skip the first slide but come back to it. So as I mentioned before, the Carteret County got a higher amount of money. It wasn't per capita. We're the 39th largest county in North Carolina, but we got more money than 39th because of the nature of our problem. And so we have been going all throughout the county, meeting with people, and we identified about 40 stakeholders who are doing wonderful things. The schools, Miriam, Hope Mission, I could go Boys and Girls Club, just lots and lots of people. Girl Scouts just down the road, I just met with them here in Cape Carteret. A lot of people doing wonderful things. But what I performed is what's called a gap analysis. If we continue to lose more and more people, where are the gaps in our coverage? And so that was all part of taking a history to make a diagnosis to figure out how we should spend the money and spend our efforts to help people. So I asked all now about 45, 2 questions. One, I asked them, why do they think Carteret County was in the top 5 in the state? There are other counties, Duplin, Burrell, Pamlico, Onslow. What sets us apart? And I wanted to talk to people who do this every day, all day for a living, or as volunteers. And then the other thing that makes Carteret County unique among all 100 counties spending this money is Sea-Level Hospital. And we'll talk more about that at the end. So I asked all of them, if we could convert Sea-Level into a behavioral health center to meet the needs, how would you use it? And we'll get into that. So back to my original point about making a diagnosis. I'm going to share with you what people told me. This isn't my idea, but when I asked people why Carteret County, they said that it was multiple factors, but one was intergenerational, that parents, a mother on heroin, a father in prison for selling drugs, that a child born into that environment was facing an uphill battle. There's also a sense of lack of opportunity to kind of advance yourself because of certain areas with concentrated poverty, seasonal work, and not a lot of established employers like some communities have of factories and things like that. And then clearly identified that everybody agrees we don't have enough mental health providers here in Carteret County. We have no psychiatrist in Carteret County that lives here, and psychologists and social workers. Drugs, very close. Asa Buck will tell you that they just come straight in from Lumberton and those areas. A sense of isolation. I mean, we're a big county, and it's very easy to get isolated here. Asa feels very strongly, and I agree with him, that there is a trajectory of vaping at age 12, underage drinking at age 16, marijuana, and that, and I've heard him say it once, I've heard him say it many times, addiction drives addiction. Certainly the reason people use drugs, teenagers, to experiment, boredom, rebellion, peer pressure. We're very blessed to have with us now Brooke Barnhill, who's in the room with me here. Brooke was tasked to us by the CDC Foundation because we were one of the 5 counties in North Carolina that they thought needed help. So they gave us money and said, could you use this money to help make your situation better? And again, we're very blessed to have county commissioners who are incredibly committed to making this better. And especially Mark Mansfield, who teaches at West Carteret, has been very purposeful about getting into the schools. And Kim Crone, who's here tonight, and Richie Paler have been incredibly supportive. So we hired Brooke, who went to Croatan High School and is getting her master's in public health at East Carolina, to help lead our efforts in the school. And when we interviewed different people for the job, the thing that stood out about Brooke was she's very passionate about this because of her own personal experiences with friends and family. But she grew up here. She hadn't been that far out of Croatan High School. But she's been talking to students, and she said something to me the other day after talking to a group of students at one of the high schools that's really stuck with me. The student said, it is so much easier to get drugs than it is to get help to not do drugs. So I know tomorrow, I know tomorrow where I can get drugs, but if I wanted help to not go on them, or if I was using them, there's really nowhere for me to go. And that's a real challenge for us, I think. And so in prevention, one thing that we're going to be very focused on is a campaign, and you'll hear more about this in among our 9th graders at our 3 high schools, to help them develop coping skills and resilience, especially to help those around them who they see as being vulnerable to using drugs, to peer pressure. We've also blessed that at ECU, we have Lee Atherton and Paul Pirelli, who are in the addiction and rehabilitative medicine department at the School of Medicine, who are world experts. And Lee and Paul will tell you that for me to sit around and develop a campaign in the schools is useless because I'm not 20 years old. And so Brooke is spending a lot of time listening to students to hear of ways that they think might prevent the tragedies we're seeing. The second thing is we've got to have more mental health providers, both in our schools and in our community. Everybody agrees with that. We need respite housing, places where people can go in times of crisis. We need affordable housing. That is certainly being homeless or not having money because you're having to pay it off for rent certainly sets up an environment that's conducive to drug use. And balance out what's called ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, with positive experiences. So if your mother's on heroin and your father's in prison and you don't have much support. How do we get that support to you? The schools will tell you that they see that, but the opportunities for those students to go somewhere to help them are limited. So that's something very much on our mind. So solutions. We want to get more school support staff. The ones there are doing a wonderful job, but they can't be everywhere. And the problem is only getting worse. The school campaign for vaping, as you heard me say, Asa Buck believes that there's a gateway or trajectory here. We're fortunate to have Lacey and Lee Stiles in the room tonight. I thought I saw Lacey. Yeah, they're with our health prevention, and we're working with Kim. They are going to be going into the middle schools to talk about vaping. And so we did that at Broad Creek this past week, and it went very well with the PTA. And we're very excited and very appreciative of Richie and Kim for allowing us to work with the schools on that. And again, I've already mentioned this, more behavioral health providers. We need a detox in Carteret County. I spend time over at Carteret Healthcare, and on any given night, if I drove back there at night on my way home and dropped by the ER, there will be a 19-year-old in there or a 22-year-old in there who they can't find a place for them to go. They're not dead. They've survived their overdose, but there's nowhere for them to go. And so it would help tremendously to have a detox center here instead of in Onslow County. And we're going to get to that. And then another thing that's been very successful, Raleigh's doing it, Wilmington's doing it, Dare County's doing it, and I think we'll do it. It's what's called a post-overdose response team, a PORT team. And those are individuals, usually a paramedic, social worker, and a peer support counselor, who at the moment of overdose, they're on call 24/7. We pay them to go to the site of the overdose and navigate those people to a better place. Do they need detox? Do they need Vivitrol? Do they need Suboxone? Do they need to get to Hope Mission? Do they need to go to Bryn Mawr? Where do they need to be at this moment of intervention to get to a better place? And it's not just overdoses. That could be somebody walking into One Harbor Church and saying, I can't do this anymore. I need help. So it's a proven system, and we're very excited about that. More transitional housing. Transportation is always a big problem for us here in Carteret County. It's a big county. Getting people or getting the services to them or getting them the services are always going to be an issue. And these are some programs that we're looking at. Healing Transitions is down in Wilmington. It's 200 beds. Housing, I think everybody, all the leaders in our community, the mayors, the county commissioners are very focused on that, with I-42 opening up. First leg will open up in November around Havelock. More and more people are coming. We need more long-term residential care, mobile units, drug courts, something Asa and I have talked about. That's been successful in some other places. I know Lee is working very closely, Lee Stiles in our department, on re-entry. People who coming out of jail, we know have a very increased risk for dying because they went into prison using a certain dose of fentanyl. They get off the fentanyl while they're there for a year, 6 months, 18 months. They come out, they go back to the same dose they were on, and their body is not tolerant of it anymore. They're not habituated to it, and they have an increased mortality rate. Again, Sheriff Buck is doing detox in the jails. And that leads me to the final thing that I have to really talk about tonight, which is something we're incredibly excited about. As we look at our options to spend the money and to try to make things better, we have different buckets. And one of them we've already mentioned is our school-based campaign. The other one is the PORT team. The other one is probably building up our areas of resilience for young people, the Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts, Troop 252 up in Davis. I've been there. I was a Boy Scout and big proponent of that. 4-H and some other children's programs here in Carteret County. We feel like we need to give the schools a place that people can go to, that they can send people to get mentors and programs that help them with resilience and making decisions. But I believe the game changer for Carteret County is sea level. For those of you who don't know, sea level is a 110-bed hospital up in sea level, a town of about 200 people, built in 1953. Pruitt Healthcare is there now, but they will be leaving in June and building a brand new facility just east of Beaufort. And the county owns that. We've been leasing it to Pruitt for $1 a month. And again, just think we're incredibly blessed that our county commissioners and our county manager are committed to using that facility to fulfill the wish of the Taylor family that built it in 1953 to help the people of Carteret County. I had the great fortune today to talk to the grandson, or not today, but yesterday, of Daniel Taylor, the older of the four brothers who built that hospital in 1953. And he was so pleased that the hospital will see a new use to help people who can so benefit from it. And we will put there a detox center so that you now don't have to sit in Carteret Healthcare before you're sent to Tennessee or Asheville or wherever the sheriff has to take you for detox. You'll just go up to sea level. And they will offer, similar to a Betty Ford Hazelton model, faith-based therapy, Suboxone, or Vivitrol. So there are 3 ways to help people, and they will offer all 3. And then there will also be residential care there for adolescents and older 18-year-olds who are just acting out aggressively. There'll be psychiatric or behavioral health care there and transitional care. The county commissioners do not want to run the facility. They're willing to lease it out for $1 a year. And we have 3 entities that are very interested in it. One is capitalized at $27 billion. It's the 5th largest healthcare system in America, based here in North Carolina. The other one is a Fortune 500 company that owns 400 hospitals, capitalized at $10 billion. And they do this all day, every day throughout the United States. And they're very, very interested in those 110 beds because they will not have to compete through what's called a certificate of need process for those beds. We have the capacity to give that to them for them to use. To give you an example, a similar kind of type facility was just built in New Hanover. It opened this month, and it cost the county $25 million to do that, and Trillium, a local managed care entity, gave them $10 million. So an entity will get for $1 what it cost in New Hanover, $35 million to do. But to do that, they have to bring in to the whole county more behavioral support specialists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers, which they do all the time. They will have to work with the schools to bring in more behavioral support people. And they will have to do those deliverables that I talked about: residential care, medication-assisted therapy, transitional care, detox, psychiatric care. But they do this all the time throughout the United States. So we are in the process of vetting those 3 institutions. And our hope is that this would be up and running by August of 24. They will have to go in and do serious rehabilitation of the building itself once Pruitt leaves in June. But we're going to let them do that. Again, we're not going to pay the cost for that by the county, nor are we going to run it. We're going to give them, if you've never been there, it's a beautiful piece of property on Nelson Bay, named after John Nelson, overlooking Salters Creek. And they have all seen the property and are appreciably very excited about one of those 3 being able to do that. I'm going to stop there. Those are really my prepared remarks. Again, I'll circle back to where I started, which is that we are incredibly appreciable for the connection, because we think that ultimately the connection of people to care or to people who care for them in whatever mode that looks, whether it's Miriam or the Girl Scouts or Hope Mission or the school system, is ultimately going to be the answer to both prevention and treatment. So with that, I'm going to stop. I feel bad. I'm very rude, had my back to y'all the whole time. I apologize. I'm going to stop and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
The other locations, if you want to unmute your mic, if anybody has questions.
Yes, ma'am.
You can just talk. Oh, okay, it's on. My name is Susan Wilder. I'm thrilled to hear that you're going to be looking at a drug court in Carteret County. I think that's very important. I wonder about a harm reduction center. Is that something you've considered?
I'm sorry, the harm reduction.
Harm.
Just talk to it.
I'm wondering about a harm reduction center. Is that something you've considered?
You know, I when you say harm reduction center, I'm not sure specifically, but we consider the port teams, which are very mobile, and they will be ongoing. Unlike the rapid response teams that we have now, where they respond and just stabilize and leave, the port team is kind of a mobile harm reduction center. Because our county is so big, we just realize an impediment to care is access. I mean, it's just a tremendous amount to ask somebody who's already at the margins for things, transportation and income, to go from Atlantic all the way to Moorhead. And the same thing for Stella. I was just in Pelletier earlier tonight. To go all the way from Pelletier is just a reach. So we're really focused on taking the harm reduction center to them by the port team, then going, okay, what do you think you need? Well, I need a place to live. That's what's driving much of my pathology. Okay, let's get you to a place to live. You're in the ER. There's no place for you to go. And so that port team takes over from the hospital. Now the hospital just sits around. I talk to the ER nurses and get on the phone, start calling, hoping somebody will help them. That port team is responsible through their contacts. And obviously, once we have sea level, they'll only have to make one call, because all 30 entities understand, just like every hospital understands, that they have to serve, regardless of pay, the people in the community. I mean, tonight, if I have no money and I break my leg and I go to Carteret County, they will take care of it. And just the same, the sea level facility would be the same. So if I had an overdose or I had a psychiatric emergency, I would be able to go to sea level regardless of my ability to pay. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. And I have two more points. Are fentanyl testing strips available in Carteret County?
Yeah, that's the second time I've been asked that today. It's a good question. And the answer is largely no. It's something other counties are doing. I think some concern about those is that, for those of you who don't know, fentanyl testing strips are just like checking your urine for sugar, like diabetes. And so the idea is that if you had somebody who was concerned about whatever they're having in front of them might have fentanyl in it, whether it be cocaine or marijuana or those kind of things, that they could kind of rub this strip on them. The concerns about that, and I'm not speaking against them, but one reason they haven't seen incredibly widespread adoption is that you consume sometimes part of the drug you're using to use the strip. And so that doesn't, people who are addicted aren't real keen on that idea of that. And the way the drugs are manufactured, there's always a possibility that just putting a strip on the outside might give you a false sense of security of whatever you're taking, the pill or whatever that's been pressed and manufactured, that it's okay. And you would pop it and they go, well, my fentanyl strip was okay. But for those people who put them out there, I'm not disparaging them but it's probably that's probably the reason they're not in incredible widespread use. Does that make sense? But if you told me that you knew of a place that was doing them, I wouldn't be critical. But I don't think they're the panacea that we would wish they would be.
Thank you. And one more question. I've noticed an improvement in some cities where the obituaries actually list the cause of death as an overdose. And in my opinion, that increases a sense of empathy in the community, that this problem is touching everyone. It's not simply, as you say, it's not isolated areas in Carteret County. It's touching every family. And I just wonder if that's something you've considered encouraging as part of your prevention or awareness campaign.
Yeah, someone who's very passionate about this is Lockwood Phillips, who I speak to frequently because Lockwood publishes those obituaries. And so it breaks his heart to put in the paper 3 times a week, 26-year-old passed away. Obviously, and I'd say this to people, there's no doubt in my mind somewhere in this audience tonight is someone who's lost a loved one. And so we try to be incredibly sensitive to their loss. And so I would just tell you that's entirely up to them. Whatever helps them is we would never do that. We don't publicize that. That's for their personal grief. And sometimes you do see that and sometimes you don't. But I talk to some of these parents who've lost children, Lee and others in this room to have, and our North Star in those situations is always the survivors, to comfort them. And we just had one 2 weeks ago. And so even though we're in public health and we have a public health mission, I took care of patients as an individual doctor for 30 years. And so the person in front of me is always going to be my number one concern. In this case, the grieving family, if that helps. But Lockwood shares your concern that if these were people who were being killed by train wrecks on Arundel Street, you'd probably see something in the paper about they were hit by a train. And so he feels like it kind of, to your point, general or doesn't raise awareness. But I just personally believe, based on my own family and friends, I just don't know that many people who haven't been affected by this. Cousins, in-laws, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. I'm talking about personally, within your own extended family. It's almost come to the point I'd be shocked if you said, of all your cousins, all your nephews, all your nieces, all your brothers, all your sisters, parents, that nobody has had an overdose. We just had one in our family just not too long ago. Any other questions? Yes, or either one. I'm sorry.
So this corporation that would run Sea Level, where do they get their money?
One's the 5th largest healthcare system in America. And so they own hospitals all throughout the United States. They're based here in North Carolina. The other one owns 400 hospitals throughout the United States, and they're a Fortune 500 company. And the other one's smaller. They own 5 clinics. And so
I understand that, but where are they going to get the money?
I'm sorry. I
Who's going to pay the money?
Yeah, they charge. They charge insurance. They charge Medicaid to support people who can't pay, just like every other hospital in America. I mean, Carteret Healthcare works because they charge people who have insurance money, and that allows people who don't have money to come in. So it's just like every other hospital.
How will you decide which of the 3 you will go with?
That's a great question. The county commissioners will have the ultimate decision. We just present our findings to them. They will have the ultimate decision. And I, again, incredibly appreciate their commitment to this, and we'll present the facts, and I'll be very interested to see what their thinking is. The 3 are somewhat pretty different, and And so, but you know, there's a wealth of experience on the county commissioner. I mean, Eddie Bowe's been here a long time. Chris Chadwick, Mark, played basketball at West Carteret. They've been here a long time. Jimmy, from down here, and now, Mr. Adams. And so, they've been here a long time. They go back to Portsmouth and even over on Shackleford. So I think they have a great understanding of, the issues. So I feel good about that. And thank them for, I mean, if you look at their experience in this county, if you had 7 times 50, 350 years, and their families go back. Yes, sir.
Yes, so the company that took over Sea Level, the nonprofit company, they would be responsible for facility upgrade as well as running the hospital and hiring staff and all that.
Yes, sir. And we have purposefully not done a site analysis. We're going to let those 3 entities come up with their own estimate of how much it would cost to redo the HVAC and the plumbing and facility maintenance. And normally the way that would work, we've got a great county manager, business guy, in addition to Tommy, Gene Foxworth. And commonly the way that's done is they sign a lease for $1 a year, for 25 years or 50 years. And as long as they meet their deliverables, then they get to use that facility. If they leave for whatever reason, then the facility reverts back to the county. And that's been done in the county before.
I think that it's very encouraging, all the efforts to really increase prevention and work on solutions and access. So is the settlement funds helping kind of pay for all that, or some of that, or how does that,
Yeah,
how much of that is the funds?
Yeah, so the fund is this year is about close to $1 million for it's front loaded. They want to get the attorney generals who did this settlement wanted to get things kicked off. They want to bring energy to the start. And for Carteret County, after that, it's about $400,000 a year for 18 years. But that sum will increase as more and more corporations come to an agreement. There are additional lawsuits out there against other entities. And as those are settled, we anticipate more money will come in. You ask a great point. I've got to meet with Tommy Burns, the county manager, on Tuesday to present all this, even though we talk about it all the time. We're very blessed here in Carteret County that many of those things we mentioned, those entities have to do themselves. The more behavioral support providers, the more behavioral support in the schools, they have to do that to get those 110 beds. And so that frees up the money from the settlement to do the port team and to support other organizations here in Carteret County. We're unique in that in North Carolina of the all 100 counties. We're the only one in that position. So if you ask me sitting here today, what I think is going to happen is that if that list I gave you of 6, really 7 things, 4 of those will be handled by people who build a system in which the gentleman's seat next to you, they charge money to do. I mean, they will charge money for that psychiatric care. They will charge money for that detox. They will charge money for that residential care. So we don't have to pay for it. That's part of their operating rhythm. And that frees up money for the others. And that's our thinking right now, which is a great blessing for Carteret County.
Great. I have one more question, if that's okay. In all of this, is there any opportunity for citizens to participate in, like an advisory committee or oversight committee, including, family members who have been through this and who could offer a very important perspective?
Absolutely. That's why we've met. We did the 3 meetings throughout the county. We've done the 41, we're now 45 one-on-ones I've had. But yes, we think that's incredibly important. So let me give you my email. And it's randall.williams@carteretcountync.gov. Again, Randall, RANDALL.Williams@carteretcountync.gov. And I'll give you my cell phone. I only carry one phone, but you're welcome to call me. It's 919-413-7791. For all of those who didn't write down my number, I know it's not because you don't think I'm important. It's just you have really good memories and you didn't need to write it down. I understand that. My wife always says, Randall, I've watched, nobody ever writes down your number when you give it. And I go, that's because they're really smart. They can remember it. They don't need to write it down.
Thank you.
Anybody here in this room have any questions?
I have questions for them. These are the smart people back here, the wise people. I'm just the spokesperson. Well, again, you have my cell phone, you have my email. We would love to hear with you. I'm willing to meet with anybody one-on-one who would be interested in helping or interested in sharing their perspective or advocating for a particular thing. Like I said, that's how we make our diagnosis. We think that gets us to better solutions, is to listen. I think that's incredibly important. Again, thank you for connecting. We think ultimately, the more connections we have, the sooner we'll get to a better place. So thank you very much. Good night.
We can make sure if anybody has any comments that they want to leave for us for future sessions, that's definitely very helpful. And again, if you have any ideas for topics that you feel like would be important for the county to hear, you can just jot those down and leave them here for us. We'll definitely compile all that. Put together some more seminars that we feel are really important to Carteret County. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Raymond.
Thank y'all for coming. Is this your book?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Lee, thanks for coming.
Are they all good?
And they're able to take home samples if they want.
Yes, yeah, please.
All right, so you guys are welcome to take home samples, and thank you again for coming.
Thank y'all. Drive safely. You better